The key wouldn't turn. At first, I thought I was just tired. I had taken my evening walk a little longer than usual, letting my feet carry me through the neighborhood like they always had. But now, as I stood at the door of my own house, a house I had paid for, loved in, cried in, my key wouldn't work. I tried again. Right pocket. Left. Jiggled it a little. That's what always worked before. I could practically hear David's voice in my head. Ma, you just gotta twist it a bit. But there was no twist this time. No click. Just resistance. I knocked. No answer. My son's truck was in the driveway. The porch light was off. Something was wrong. I knocked harder. Still nothing. I felt the chill of the evening crawl into my bones. I rang the bell. I waited. It hit me slowly at first, like a dull ache you can't name until it sharpens into pain. He changed the locks. My own son changed the locks while I was out walking the block. And he didn't even tell me. I stepped back and looked at the window I'd cleaned just days ago. My welcome mat was gone. The small rocking chair I always sat in gone. Even the flower pots I watered every week were no longer there. My name was being erased in real time. I sat down on the porch step, stunned. Not angry. Not yet. Just hollow. It got colder as the night deepened, but I didn't move. Neighbors' lights flicked off, one by one. Dogs barked and quieted. But I sat still, like some forgotten statue carved from old grief. I heard laughter from inside the house. Muffled, careless laughter. My son's voice. And hers, Tiffany. That voice, honey-sweet, but sharp like a broken bottle. I'd known the moment I met her that she was after something. David was blind to it. Or maybe he just didn't care. They were in there, laughing. While I, the woman who raised him, who once sold her engagement ring to pay his tuition, was locked out like an intruder. I curled up on the swing, wrapping my sweater tighter around me. My back ached. My pride burned. But most of all, my heart cracked wide open. What had I done wrong? Where did I go so wrong with him? Sleep came in fragments that night, in between memories and heartbeats. I watched the stars blink overhead, and I whispered to them, "He doesn't love me anymore, does he?" And the stars stayed quiet, just like him. As I sat on that swing under the stars, I knew one thing. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the start of a reckoning. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone you loved, share your story in the comments. Like, comment, and subscribe, because the next chapter might just feel like your own. By the time the sun rose, I wasn't numb anymore. I was angry. It was a slow-burning kind of anger, the kind that simmers in your gut until it thickens into resolve. I stood up from the porch swing, legs stiff, spine aching, but heart steady. I didn't knock again. I didn't try the key. Instead, I walked down the street and called a cab from the gas station. The young man behind the counter offered me a coffee and looked at me like I was a ghost. Maybe I was, but I knew where I needed to go. Whitmore and Beck, law offices, I told the driver. Downtown. Early morning for legal trouble, he joked. I didn't laugh. It's been a long night. Marion Beck had been my lawyer for 20 years. She helped me draft the first version of my will after my husband, James, passed. Back then, everything went to David. Of course it did. He was my only child, my baby, my reason. Now I was sitting across from her again with the same file in my hand, but a different fire in my chest. I want to change everything, I said. She blinked. Everything. I nodded. He locked me out. He left me outside like a stray dog. So now I'm locking him out of my legacy. We went line by line. My house? To the Women's Shelter Foundation. Let it become a home for women who had no doors left to knock on. My savings? To the local library and Veterans Center. The trust fund my husband had started for David's future? Gone. It was mine now, and I was going to use it to build something better, something honest. Marion didn't interrupt. Not once. When it was done, she looked up from her desk. "Are you sure you want this, Ellie?" "Yes," I said. "Even if he comes crawling back?" I leaned in, steady. "If he ever crawls, it won't be for love. It'll be for money. And I won't be handing either out anymore." She slid the papers toward me. "Then sign." My hand trembled a little as I picked up the pen. Not from fear. From release. The ink dried before the guilt even had a chance to creep in. I left the office lighter than I'd entered. Something inside me had cracked open, but it wasn't weakness. It was freedom. He took my home, but I still had my name. And now, I had the power to decide what that name meant. I still remember the first time I held David in my arms. He was red-faced and quiet, blinking up at me like I was the whole world. He didn't cry much, not like the other babies. He just watched, always watching. When he was 5, he used to hide behind my legs whenever someone new came into the house. At night, he couldn't sleep without his bear, Benny, and me singing, "You Are My Sunshine." He hated thunderstorms. I'd hold him close, count the seconds between lightning and thunder, and tell him stories until he drifted off. He loved animals. We had a golden retriever named Patch, and David used to nap beside him in the backyard, tiny fingers tangled in soft fur. He was a kind boy, sensitive, fragile in some ways, and I protected that part of him like a mother lion. So what happened? I asked myself that more than I cared to admit. Did I raise him wrong? Did I love him too much or not enough? Somewhere between scraped knees and graduation caps, something shifted in him. The boy I raised became someone else. Someone who could leave his mother on a porch overnight. I didn't go back to the house. Instead, I took a cab to George's. She opened the door in her nightgown, hair wrapped in a scarf, eyes widening the second she saw my face. "Ellie, what happened?" I walked in without answering, sat down on her floral print couch like it was mine. She didn't ask again. She just brought me tea and waited. When I finally spoke, my voice cracked. "David locked me out." She blinked. "What do you mean, locked you out?" "I mean he changed the locks. I mean I stood outside my own house like a damn trespasser while my son laughed inside with his wife." Georgia looked like she'd been slapped. "No, no way. Not David." I nodded slowly. "Yes, David." She sat beside me, hand on my shoulder. "I don't understand. That boy worshipped you." "Not anymore," I said. "Now he worships money." And then I said something I didn't expect to say. I think she got to him. Tiffany. Ever since he married her, he's changed." Georgia frowned. That girl always had a snake smile. I knew it the day she came to Easter wearing heels higher than her morals. We both laughed, but only for a second, because underneath it we knew. This wasn't just about a bad daughter-in-law. This was about a son I no longer recognized. Her name was Tiffany. The kind of woman who wore sunglasses inside, called me Ma with a tight grin, and acted like every family gathering was beneath her. She was all perfume, polished nails, and paper-thin charm. I met her at David's rushed courthouse wedding last year. No flowers, no family, just a signed license and a shaky smile from my son. He told me she was the one, that she understood him. What she understood was numbers, bank accounts, real estate deeds, retirement savings. The first time we sat down for dinner, Tiffany asked me how much my house was worth. Not how long I'd lived there. Not how many memories were made in its walls. Just the number. I should have known then, but I wanted to believe she loved him. Now I see it all clearly. The way she looked at the family photo on the mantle and turned it face down. The way she accidentally donated the Afghan I crocheted in 1987. The way she constantly asked David, "So, do you get the house when your mom dies?" I heard it. I let it slide. But I won't let it slide anymore. The worst part wasn't what she did. It was how David let her do it. He used to defend me. Used to call every night just to check in. But after she moved in, the calls stopped. The visits ended. And slowly, my son became her shadow. One afternoon about a month ago, I overheard them talking through the kitchen window. They were out back, didn't know I was home. Tiffany's voice, sweet like poison, she's old. She's sitting on gold, and she's too soft to notice. David didn't correct her. He didn't say a word. Then she added something that made my stomach twist. She's lived long enough. It's time we move on. Move on. As if I were a piece of worn-out furniture. I gripped the counter that day to stop myself from screaming. I wanted to burst through that door and throw them both out. But instead, I stayed quiet. I needed to know how deep it went. And now I do. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a slow, planned removal. First my photo albums went missing. Then my chair on the porch. then my name on the mailbox, and now the lock. It wasn't an accident. It was an eviction. A quiet, polite, cruel erasure. But they forgot one thing. I built that house. I paid every mortgage. I survived heartbreak, cancer, and widowhood inside those walls. And I'm not going to let them bury me while I'm still breathing. Georgia helped me bring in an old chest from her garage, one I hadn't opened in years. It smelled of cedar and forgotten summers. Inside were folded quilts, yellowed recipes, and photos of a younger me smiling beside a taller man with kind eyes, James, my husband, the only man who ever truly saw me. Beneath it all, tucked between two Bible pages, was a small envelope with my name on it. My heart skipped. His handwriting, still sharp, still steady. I opened it with trembling fingers. Ellie, it read, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you're still stronger than you think. I held the letter to my chest before finishing it. It smelled like time. He had written it during his last month, when the cancer was taking him, and I was too proud to cry in front of him. He told me to be brave, to trust my gut, to protect what was mine, and not let love blind me from betrayal. People will come for your kindness, he wrote, but don't let them walk off with your dignity, too. I sat in George's living room with tears sliding down my cheeks. James always knew I'd face something like this. He didn't leave me unarmed. That letter lit a fire in me. The next morning, I put on my good shoes and my lipstick. Not because I had anywhere fancy to be, but because I needed to feel like the woman James believed I still was. I walked straight into the bank and opened a new account, my name only. The teller was polite, but curious. Moving things around, Mrs. Whitmore? Yes, I said. Cleaning house. I transferred what was left of my savings, liquidated the emergency bonds, and closed the joint account David had quietly added his name to years ago. After that, I visited the family lawyer again and moved the trust into a private foundation under my full control. Not a single dollar could now reach David without my permission. It felt like pulling bricks off my chest, one by one. Then I did something even more symbolic. I drove to the county museum and donated James's grandfather's gold pocket watch, the one David always eyed, the one he once said he'd probably sell for a down payment. It didn't belong to someone like him anymore. Let it live in glass, where people could admire it, not exploit it. Every step I took that day felt like untying another knot they'd put around my life. I wasn't angry anymore. I was awake. And for the first time in years, I was mine. They came to George's house 3 days later. No phone call. No warning. Just a knock that rattled the front door like guilt itself had shown up. I was sipping coffee on the porch when I saw their car. Tiffany stepped out first, heels clicking on the pavement, eyes already scanning the yard like she was hunting something. David followed behind her, shoulders stiff, hands in his pockets. Georgia opened the door before they could knock again. She doesn't want to see you, she said. She'll want to after what we have to say, Tiffany chirped. I stood. Georgia stepped aside. She trusted me to speak. David looked at me like he didn't expect me to be standing tall, like he thought I'd be smaller by now, maybe curled in a corner, sobbing for forgiveness. He was wrong. You changed the will. Tiffany snapped. I nodded. Yes, I did. You left us with nothing. I let that hang in the air. You're my mother, David said. How could you do this? I stared at him long and hard. No. The question is, how could you? Tiffany's voice turned high and sharp. You can't just leave your family out of everything. We have a child on the way. You mean the child you keep using like a bargaining chip? I asked. Her face flushed, but I wasn't done. David, I said, turning to him, do you even know what she's doing to you? He looked down. Silence stretched. Do you remember what I told you when you were 12, after you broke that neighbor boy's glasses and lied to me about it? He nodded faintly. You said that love tells the truth, even when it hurts. And he swallowed. And lies always come back uglier than they left. I stepped forward. I changed everything, David. The house, the money, the trust, none of it is yours now. You had your chance, and you used it to shut a door on your mother's face. Tiffany crossed her arms. You think this is over? We'll take this to court. Good, I said. You'll lose, because I have every document, every signature, and every receipt. Her mouth opened, then shut. David just looked like a boy again, a lost, broken boy. But I didn't feel sorry for him, because love without respect isn't love. And sons who let their mother sleep on porches don't get second chances. It's strange how quiet life becomes after a storm. No shouting, no footsteps pacing the hallway, no second-guessing yourself every time the phone rings. Just quiet. Thick, humming quiet. Some days it feels like peace. Other days, it feels like grief with the volume turned down. I sit by George's front window with my tea most mornings now, watching birds in the yard, listening to the world move on without my permission. Georgia offers to take me shopping, to church, to lunch. She means well, but I politely decline more often than not. I just want to sit, I say, just for a little longer, because I'm still sorting through the ache that lives behind my ribs. I didn't just lose a son. I lost the story I told myself about who he was. I lost the idea that my love had been enough to protect him from greed, from weak choices, from women like Tiffany. But I'm learning to live with that truth now. Some sons don't turn out kind. Some love stories don't get fixed. And some endings come without slamming doors, just a soft, endless silence. It was a Tuesday when I saw his truck again, parked across the street, engine off, windows up, just sitting there, quiet as the morning fog. I recognized the shape of his shoulders, even from here. He didn't get out. He didn't ring the bell. He just sat there for 20 minutes, then drove off. He came back again on Friday. Same time, same place. I never moved, never waved, just sat inside. Heart a little heavier, tea a little colder. The third time, I almost opened the door. Almost. But then I remembered that night on the porch. The laughter. The silence when I knocked. The way Tiffany said I'd lived long enough. And I sat back down. He never came to say sorry. Never brought back the key. Never asked me what I needed. Or how I'd slept that night on the swing. He just sat in his truck like a boy too ashamed to come home. But shame without apology means nothing. So I closed the curtain. And I let the silence scream louder than any words he could offer. I stood in front of the house for the first time in 3 months. The grass was taller. The shutters needed painting. A wasp's nest had taken hold above the garage window. But it was still mine. Not on paper, not just legally, mine in soul. This house had watched me grow up and grow old. It had held James's laughter in its walls, David's baby footsteps in its floorboards, and now it held the memory of my strength. It had watched me cry, collapse, rebuild, and rise. Georgia helped me pack up her spare bedroom that morning. I didn't cry. I didn't feel broken. I was going home, not the house I was locked out of, but the house I reclaimed. Not just with paperwork, but with pride. As I walked through the front door, the new key warm in my palm, I didn't flinch at the silence. It wasn't empty. It was peaceful. I walked from room to room, whispering to each space like they were old friends I had left behind. Kitchen. You remember when James burnt the roast? Living room. You still carry the dent where David threw his toy truck. Back porch. You saw me cry when the cancer diagnosis came. Now I saw something else, a future, not haunted by the past, but rooted in it. I rolled up my sleeves. The next 2 weeks were a blur of paint, sweat, and soft music from my old record player. I opened the windows wide, let the dust and ghosts drift out. I cleaned every corner like I was telling the house, I'm here. I made it. I planted a new rose bush where the welcome mat used to be. I didn't need a sign to say I belonged here. The house already knew. And now so did I. Life didn't go back to how it was. It went forward. I started small, inviting a few of the widows from church over for tea on Saturdays. Georgia helped me bake lemon cakes and set up chairs in the garden. We laughed, cried, and swapped stories of love and loss like recipes passed down through generations. Then someone mentioned they knew a woman recently widowed, couldn't afford groceries. Another said her neighbor was being evicted after 30 years. I listened, nodded, and felt something rise in me like warm bread in an oven. That's when I started the idea, the Porch Project, a community kitchen for women like me, for women discarded after a certain age, locked out of homes they built, silenced in families they nurtured. I used the money that once had David's name on it. It felt poetic. I saw lives change with every meal. Women stood taller, laughed louder, looked each other in the eye instead of down at the ground. And every time someone asked me why I started it, I gave them the same answer. Because someone once made me feel invisible, and I refused to disappear. One evening, after everyone had gone home, I sat on the back porch, tea in hand, sweater wrapped around my shoulders. The sun dipped behind the trees, leaving behind a gold haze. I thought of David. He hadn't come back. Not really. Just those silent visits in his truck. No calls, no letters, no apology. And strangely, I was okay with that. Because healing didn't need an apology. It needed distance. It needed air. And I finally had both. I looked at the house, the chipped bricks, the faded shutters, the new rose blooming near the steps, and I smiled. This house was never about the walls. It was about the woman inside them. I didn't just change the will. I rewrote the story. And this time I wrote it for me.